My experience with life. Still, I'm still young, but the way I've the way I've changed is very interesting. It almost seems like growing of the human spirit, right? Growing as a human being, right? Developing as a human being is a natural part of life. It's a natural process. Some people go through it faster, some people slower, some people maybe the steps are in different orders, right? But everyone changes through the course of life. I've been thinking a lot about communities, culture, things like cultural appreciation, appropriation, misappropriation, things like communities, right? Small communities becoming mainstream, and things about raising, nurturing a child, plants, animals, like a pet, even relationships. When I was part of a very small niche community, it feels very personal. It feels very intimate, right? Because it's so small, it's so niche. Everyone loves that very tiny niche thing. For me, it's Endless Ocean, right? I love Endless Ocean. It's pretty much what not inspired me, but what really made me fall in love with the ocean, with sea, with marine life. I loved fish and octopus and marine life beforehand, but that's really what made me fall in love with marine life. But seeing a very niche community like that become mainstream. So for me, that was probably anime. Seeing anime become mainstream throughout my lifetime, it's both very joyful and very bittersweet. It's joyful because I love it, right? What I love, I want to share with other people. That's why I love it. But it's bittersweet because it's when things get big, you lose that intimacy, right? You lose that closeness, the connection. And so it's very bittersweet. Very bittersweet. Um and I feel like that's the same with culture as well. Communities are a subset of culture, right? Culture is like a bigger amalgamation. um, Being part of a rare culture or relatively rare culture, and then it becoming mainstream. That's very it's a very joyous moment, but also kind of bittersweet too, right? Like there's almost a when we go to the words right, cultural appreciation, cultural appropriation, technically anything, any sort of cultural intermingling is appropriation, technically speaking. And every culture is a mix of every other culture throughout history and throughout geography. But the difference is, right, just like with discrimination, right? Discriminating is just a neutral term. But colloquially, right, in common language, we use it, at least in America, for like racial, gender, age, right? So any sort of socioeconomic discrimination. But discrimination can be like discriminating between um, plants, right? Discriminating between um, maths, right? Math equations, right? That's still technically discrimination, but we don't use. Same with cultural appropriation. Probably the better term to use would be cultural misappropriation, right? You're misappropriating. But yeah, it's very similar with culture. Uh, I guess with a personal example, I'm Japanese, so it's interesting to see Japanese culture become mainstream, but it's also very, uh, it can be both good and bad. Um, it almost seems like people do it for clout, perhaps, rather than because they actually truly love it. But there's a whole spectrum to it. And the last part kind of connects it all together. What it feels like to nurture, to take care of something. Uh, I've never had kids. If you've had kids, you probably would know a lot better. But for me, like taking care of pets, taking care of plants, it's very seeing my plants grow up, seeing my pets grow up. It's very humbling, right? I'm very grateful, but it's also bittersweet, right? Seeing them grow up, right? It's very bittersweet. Growing older. It's like that stereotypical sentiment, right? Like a parent raising a child and they see their child all grown up, right? It's bittersweet. It's sweet because you love your child, right? You do anything for your child. And it's such a joyous experience to see your child all grown up, right? It's very joyous. And also, it's very bitter as well. It's very sad too because you have to let them go, right? It's the birds leaving the nest, right? It's very bittersweet, very bittersweet. And I think that feeling, that feeling of both being bitter and sweet, right? That feeling of the intimacy, right? The closeness, and also things becoming popular, becoming mainstream. That like that duality. I think raising a child is exactly the same feeling as raising a community, right? Being having grown up in a community. I think it's the exact same feeling.